Niggas get the ball played and gets the action. Let's go. Why you got it? Change the time.
He asked Chris Paul if he changed up the defensive assignment yesterday. And Chris said, no, I didn't change up the assignment. I just suggested, hey, we might want to have somebody else guarding Clay right now because Kawhi is not warm yet.
Paul was sent home by the Clippers because his leadership style clashed with the team. He had been vocal in holding management, coaches, and players accountable, which the team felt became disruptive.
Found out he was being sent home. The media painted him as the villain almost immediately, calling him difficult, a locker room lawyer, and too disruptive for the Clippers organization to handle. But here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. Video footage surfaced telling a completely different story, and once you see what Chris Paul was actually calling out, the reason the Clippers wanted him gone becomes crystal clear. He wasn't the problem at all, and that made everybody in that building uncomfortable. Let me show you exactly what went down. The official story sounds simple enough. The Clippers were struggling through a brutal start to the season, and Chris Paul, being Chris Paul, started holding people accountable. He questioned coaching decisions, challenged the front office, and voiced his concerns about effort. The organization apparently decided that was too much to handle, which brings us to Lawrence Frank flying to Atlanta to deliver the news personally. Frank's statement claimed they were parting ways with Chris Paul, while making sure to add that nobody was blaming him for the team's poor performance. A veteran player clashing with management happens all the time in the NBA, and on the surface, this looked like just another case of that. The problem is, there's a massive hole in this story, and when you watch the actual game film, when you see what Chris Paul was reacting to, something disturbing starts to emerge. The Clippers didn't get rid of Chris Paul because he was being disruptive. They removed him because he was exposing something the organization wanted to keep hidden. And that something involves their highest paid player. Let's break down the footage that changed everything. During a game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Clippers found themselves down 13 points in the fourth quarter and desperately needed a spark, while Donovan Mitchell was cooking them on every possession. And that's when things got interesting. Chris Paul, a 40-year-old man whose career is winding down, decided to take on the challenge of guarding Mitchell himself. Think about what that means for a second. This is a player everybody admits is too slow at this point, with his legs gone and his career hanging by a thread. And there he was, fighting over screens and giving maximum effort, trying to will his team back into contention. Kawhi Leonard was doing something very different on the other end of the floor. After the Clippers scored, the Cavaliers ran a classic stall tactic where Darius Garland let the ball roll up the court instead of picking it up quickly. When the ball rolls like that, the game clock keeps running while the shot clock doesn't start until someone touches it, which is a smart veteran move to burn time with a lead. Chris Paul recognized what was happening immediately and started yelling at his teammates to get up and pressure the ball, but Kawhi Leonard just jogged back casually like nothing urgent was happening. Garland rolled the ball all the way to the front court without any resistance, and by the time anyone applied pressure, the Cavs had burned 16 seconds off the game clock for free. Garland then drove into the paint, kicked it out, and Cleveland hit a three to extend the lead even further. From start to finish, the Cavaliers wasted over 30 seconds of game time and got a bucket. All because nobody on the Clippers wanted to hustle back. And what happened next made things even worse. The very next possession brought the same exact problem. The Clippers scored, and Kawhi started trotting back again with that slow, casual jog like this was a practice scrimmage instead of a game they needed to win. Garland saw it happening and just let the ball roll again, because why wouldn't he when nobody was going to stop him anyway? Here's the moment that tells you everything you need to know about this team. While every other Clipper jogged back at half speed, Chris Paul sprinted all the way to the backcourt himself to make sure Garland couldn't waste any more time. The camera panned back to show the play developing, and Kawhi wasn't even visible in the frame because he was that far behind the action. A 40-year-old point guard with 1 foot out of the league, showing more urgency than a two-time Finals MVP collecting over $50 million a year, tells you all you need to know about this locker room. After a dead ball, Chris Paul finally went up to Kawhi and told him directly that he needed to get up because Cleveland was wasting way too much time on them. The next possession saw Kawhi finally hustle to pressure the ball handler, which raises an obvious question. Without Chris Paul saying something, would Kawhi have continued jogging through the rest of the game? And would anyone else on that roster have had the courage to call it out? Based on everything we've seen, the answer is probably no, and that right there represents the real problem with the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, which is Kawhi Leonard's defensive reputation and whether it actually matches reality anymore. 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards sit on his mantle from his San Antonio days when he could shut down anyone the Spurs put him in front of, whether that was LeBron, Durant, or any other superstar in the league. What the casual fan doesn't realize is that NBA reputations stick around way longer than actual performance does. Once you get labeled an elite defender, people assume you're still that guy forever, while the media keeps calling you a two-way superstar, and analysts keep talking about how dangerous you are on both ends. Reality paints a different picture entirely. Kawhi Leonard hasn't made an all-defensive team since 2021, and his defensive rating last season came in as the worst of his career. Watching the games instead of checking box scores reveals the effort has been deteriorating for years, turning him into an offensive first player who coasts on the defensive end. His scoring ability remains elite without question, but the idea that he's some dominant two-way force just doesn't hold up to scrutiny anymore. When Chris Paul pointed this out, when he tried to hold the supposed leader of the team accountable, the organization turned on him completely. Silencing the messenger turned out to be easier than addressing the message itself. What accelerated Chris Paul's departure involved a direct confrontation with the coaching staff that went down during the Clippers' loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Kawhi Leonard was struggling defensively against Klay Thompson after checking back into the game following a rest period, clearly not warmed up and unable to stay in front of his assignment. During a fourth-quarter timeout, Chris Paul approached Kawhi with a simple question, asking if he felt fresh enough and whether he could stick with Klay right now. Kawhi admitted he was struggling, which led Paul to suggest to his teammates that maybe they should switch the defensive assignment until Kawhi got his legs under him. The adjustment made perfect sense as the kind of veteran move that wins games, and the Clippers made the switch. That's when everything fell apart. The next day brought a meeting between assistant coach Jeff Van Gundy and Chris Paul on the team plane. Van Gundy asked Paul directly if he had changed the defensive assignment during the game, and Paul explained that he didn't officially change anything, but only suggested that someone else should guard Klay until Kawhi was ready to take over. Van Gundy's response cut cold. He told Paul that he might have had leeway in other places to change up defensive coverages, but he didn't have that leeway in Los Angeles. A 12-time All-Star with 21 years in the league and more basketball IQ than almost anyone in the building was being told he didn't have permission to make common-sense suggestions during a game his team was losing. Chris Paul posted a cryptic message on social media shortly after, just a screenshot of the dictionary definition of the word leeway, with no explanation. Now we know exactly what he was talking about. What makes this whole situation even more revealing is what happened after Chris Paul got sent home. James Harden and Kawhi Leonard both went to the media claiming shock at the decision and acting like they had no idea this was coming. Multiple sources report that wasn't true at all. Reports surfaced saying both Leonard and Harden had grown sick and tired of Chris Paul's constant accountability, and they knew the move was coming because they signed off on it and felt relief when he was finally gone. The two highest-paid stars on the roster watched their teammate get exiled for pointing out legitimate effort problems, and instead of backing him up, they let it happen and maybe even wanted it to go down that way. Leonard initially didn't mind Paul's feedback because he respected him as a player and a person, but over time, he started viewing the advice as nagging rather than constructive criticism from someone who wanted to win. Harden apparently wasn't fully on board with signing Paul in the first place because he knew from their Houston days that Chris Paul could be difficult to work with, and those reservations turned out justified from his perspective. What we're looking at is a locker room where the two franchise cornerstones prioritize their comfort over accountability, wanting a peaceful environment more than someone pushing them to improve. The organization backed them completely on that choice. Zooming out reveals this isn't just about Chris Paul anymore, because there's a fundamental cultural problem eating away at the Los Angeles Clippers from the inside. The team sat at 6-18 when they sent Paul home after losing 8 of their last 10 games, while ranking 25th in defensive rating and 19th in offensive rating. By every measurable standard, this team was failing badly. And when the one person willing to demand more from his teammates spoke up, he became the one who got removed from the equation. Nobody else on that roster was going to hold Kawhi Leonard accountable because everyone is chasing their next contract, trying to extend their career as long as possible, and nobody wants to rock the boat by getting labeled as difficult. Chris Paul was the only one with nothing to lose, since his playing days are ending after this season anyway. He doesn't need another contract and doesn't need to stay on anyone's good side, which gave him the freedom to actually speak the truth. That freedom made him dangerous to an organization that would rather lose comfortably than win through accountability. The Clippers now find themselves trapped in an impossible position with over $50 million owed to Kawhi Leonard next season, and James Harden holding a $42 million player option he's almost certainly going to exercise. Draft picks owed to Oklahoma City mean they can't even properly tank to rebuild, and no clear path forward exists for this franchise. The veterans surrounding their stars haven't produced results. The defensive issues remain unfixed. And now, the one voice demanding better has been silenced. Steve Ballmer invested billions of dollars into this franchise, built a brand new arena, and assembled what was supposed to be a championship contending roster. Yet, the culture he's created is one where nobody can speak truth to power. The investigation into potential salary cap circumvention related to Kawhi Leonard remained ongoing while the team deals with injuries, chemistry issues, and a fan base running out of patience. Every loss closes the window a little more. Chris Paul's legacy will spark debate forever because he's one of the greatest point guards in basketball history, while also developing a reputation for being hard to play with. And both of those things can exist at the same time without contradiction. What nobody can deny is that when video footage surfaced showing exactly what Chris Paul was calling out, the evidence proved overwhelming. He wasn't making things up or being unreasonable, but pointing out real, visible effort problems from players who should know better. Sometimes the difficult person in the room isn't difficult at all and is just the only honest one, the only person willing to say what everybody else is thinking but too afraid to speak out loud. Chris Paul walked out of that organization with receipts, and now the whole world can see what he saw. The question is whether the Clippers will ever do anything about it, and based on everything that's happened, addressing the real problem would mean having uncomfortable conversations with the people getting paid the most money, which isn't something this organization seems willing to do. They'll keep losing, keep making excuses, and keep wondering why nothing works. Meanwhile, a 40-year-old point guard with 1 foot out of the league proved he cared more about winning than guys making 10 times his salary. And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know about what's really broken in Los Angeles.